Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have raised concerns in the past with Iran's practice of mining cryptocurrency in order to launder its sanctioned oil and natural gas reserves into cash, because the main cost associated with mining cryptocurrency is energy. I worry that the Russian government will also look to mining as a way to evade sanctions. According to the Cambridge Bitcoin Electricity Consumption Index, Russia accounts for 13.6% of all Bitcoin mining as measured by energy consumption. So they certainly have the infrastructure for such activities. So, Mr. Stansberry, are there tools that would allow financial institutions and regulators to prevent use of mining to avoid sanctions?
There are tools available to regulators, but I think largely it's on the enforcement front. You're right that Iran has successfully mined cryptocurrency to its advantage. There's also, a lot of reporting about North Korea that has turned to cryptocurrency to fund its regime. So it's a huge problem. But I think that mostly, we need to look to on the enforcement front. What are these nation states? How are these nation states able to bypass sanctions? How are they able to convert the cryptocurrency that they are mining? Because they are moving it across borders and somehow converting it to a medium that they can use. So that I think is where most of the problem lies.
And Mr. Levin and Mr. Chobanian, what's your understanding of the links between Russian miners and the Russian government?
Happy to go first.
I can.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Michael, you can go first.
Thank you. So I can say that probably there is none, because Russian miners are just regular people, the businessmen who are, doing it for principles of, crypto, because they believe in this technology, or especially if they want to earn money, that's what they do. But again, when you talk about sanctions on the government level, what kind of sums are we talking about? If we're talking about billions, then I can answer you right now, it's impossible to substitute Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for US dollars on the government level. You cannot transfer that easily, a couple of billions of dollars, without anyone noticing on the physical level. So I would like to stress this point. So it's not an issue of the big numbers, and smaller numbers. It's not about buying oil or buying weapons or buying anything else with the small numbers of in US dollars. Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah, Senator, I would agree with what Mr. Chobanian said. I think the only other thing to raise is that it has been possible for US law enforcement and the intelligence community to actually identify and attribute Russian government activity in cybercrime cases when it comes to the issues of ransomware, hacking, or other forms of financial crime. And so, it's the case that we need to further the capabilities of those agencies to get close to the operatives and the operations of Russia in this domain to continue to understand the evolving picture.
Now, there's a difference between the Russian government and Russian oligarchs. The government's relationship with exchanges, both foreign and domestic, is going to be an increasingly key element in enforcing sanctions going forward. We're seeing with the current crisis in Ukraine that law enforcement is relying on exchanges themselves to screen users and block sanctioned targets. Mr. Stansberry, what are the risks to U.S. persons and institutions of trading with exchanges in Russia and other jurisdictions with poor monitoring and know your customer rules?
I think one of the risks is scam, fraud, and theft. There's a degree of risk that any consumer is taking when they place their investment or their money into the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And in a high-risk environment like that, I think that is one of the chief concerns, particularly as cryptocurrency grows in popularity and less sophisticated investors get into the market.
And finally, Mr. Levin, your firm estimates that of all the ransomware payments made in 2020, 15% of them carried a risk of sanctions violations. So essentially, victims of ransomware attacks are increasingly finding themselves targeted by sanctioned entities, and therefore victims that make ransom payments in cryptocurrency may themselves be committing sanctions violations. How should we in Congress think about addressing this problem without undermining the efficiency of our sanctions tools?
Thank you, Senator. It's a delicate balance between the issue of sanctioning and disrupting the cybercrime activity and raising the deterrent against such attacks. And so, I think the effective sanctions against entities like Evil Corp that have been sort of behind these types of attacks has meant that there are fewer firms that are willing to actually pay those ransoms, which does actually reduce the incentive by which they have to attack our population. And so, I think that it's another example of how effective sanctions can be when it comes to disrupting activity that we are worried about for our public safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.